Shalom to the Harazion community. Parashat Vayishlach contains one of the most iconic and yet oddest, most cryptic stories in the Tanakh. On the eve of his confrontation with his brother Eisav, Yaakov Avinu finds himself wrestling through the night with a mysterious man. The man, unable to overcome Yaakov, reaches for his hip, injuring him in the process. But Yaakov stands tall. In exchange for the man's release, Yaakov demands that this man give him a bracha. The man responds by renaming Yaakov. Finally, we're told that because Yaakov was touched on the hip where the Gid HaNasheh, the sciatic nerve, is located, Bnei Israel should not eat the Gid HaNasheh. Well, I'm sure that diving deeper into the details in the psukim would give us even more oddities and questions. We'll try to answer just a few basic ones. First, and perhaps most importantly, what's the point of the story? Why is Yaakov wrestling with some anonymous man? Also, why is Yaakov's name changed? Last, why is this little detail surrounding Yaakov's hip so important that the Torah immortalizes it by giving it its own halacha? Now, Bravanel gives us a little bit of insight into the nature of this wrestling match. Wrestling, in its earlier iterations, was meant to be purely a show of force, of strength, not so much technique. And so, the wrestlers were allowed to use their arms to try to overpower their opponents, toss them to the ground. But any grabbing below the torso was strictly off limits. Being unable to overpower Yaakov, the man resorts to cheating, trying to gain leverage by grabbing at Yaakov's hip. This gives us a little bit of insight into how exactly the wrestling match went down, but even more importantly, it gives us some very, very significant insight into Yaakov's life. Yaakov has had to contend with trickery and deceit all of his life. And in turn, he's also fended for himself by becoming quite the deceiver. But on the eve of his re-entry into the land of Canaan, about to face off with his original greatest foe, his brother Eisav, Yaakov alone must again wrestle with a cheater. But this is not the same Yaakov that we've seen before. This Yaakov will not be moved by the deception, by the unfair tricks of his opponent. This Yaakov stands tall. He will attain his bracha, this time without resorting to trickery. And he receives a new name in turn, Yisrael, Kisarita im Elokim v'im anashim vatuchal. You contended with God and with man and succeeded. He is no longer Yaakov, named for grasping at the heel of his brother Eisav, but Yaakov, who stands tall and faces any challenge head on. And so, the Torah leaves us with an eternal reminder, the prohibition not to eat the Gid HaNasheh. Although we may find ourselves with those who don't always deal honestly, whether in business, or school, or just life more generally, even if it leaves its mark, like Yaakov's hip, we, the Bnei Yisrael, must remember to stand straight, maintain our honesty, our integrity, as we navigate a tricky world. Shabbat Shalom.